This last week I started a new market. Oh, it's oddly appropriate for the kind of weird combination of things I like to do. And if you followed me on any other platform, you'll probably know that there are some markets that I have, some people would say I'm not allowed to do anymore, but oddly enough, I decided to stop doing due to people, like we say in this house, getting manager brain and not being conducive to a positive work atmosphere. Well, but luckily I've been able to start kind of pricing a lot of the fixtures that I've wanted to replace for a long time. Like, if you've visited me at work, you've probably seen that I used to use a lot more grid cubes, this kind of thing, than I currently do, and I've been scaling back using those because they are really a pain to transport, a pain to set up, especially when I'm a little bit later than I'd like to be. I try to get in the mindset of, yes, they're heavily used, but if I can replace something, polish something up, is there a good deal that I can give somebody else that's trying to start doing essentially the kind of thing that I am doing right now? Which, as it does, kind of flow-charted in my brain into what are things that I didn't get help with in starting doing like pop-up markets and online shops? What are things that I wish I had known that I haven't seen in how-to and tip videos? What are things that people don't really talk about that I wish they did, that I at least had the ability to consider before starting this? So for my credentials in giving some of this information, I counted just a little bit ago, and I have done 52 different markets, not counting the markets that have, not counting the markets that are more than one day. So like a 4-day convention, counting as one. And I've done a few of those. I've done 52 different markets, and it makes me feel so very tired. I haven't done every single kind of market, but I have done quite a few, and that's over the last 2 years or so. I think it's almost exactly 2 years because I started doing this on May 1st of 2022. So just to get out of the way, one of the tips that is the, not necessarily the most important, but the one that is consistently on my mind is these things are awful. For some context, this is what I used to do with my booth. I used to use quite a few of these, and they won't be awful for everyone. I've noticed that the people who tend to use them the most are people who have like maybe 1 or 2 categories, lots of small things like art prints or stickers or a lot of small things that need to be hung up. I am very fortunate to have been able to replace these fairly recently. It's actually, there's a new shelf that's coming in the mail that's 1 unit. But we can circle back around to these and why I personally find these really, really awful. Don't feel like you need to start your setup in its ultimate form to begin with, because there's lots of different versions of my own work and how I display it. Because as long as I can learn something from a market, then as long as I've made the money back, then it's not a total waste. Also, because of the number of places that I've been, I try to keep in the mindset of being adaptable. I sometimes get to a place and it's not exactly as I thought it would be, so I have to kind of cut my display in half and arrange things all the way around. My first tip is definitely get your own tables. Even if you start it with like a 4-foot folding something, I am a big proponent of figuring out unorthodox ways to do things. I really don't like those articles and videos that start out with, oh, just buy these displays, it'll be fine. Not everybody can start out like that. But the most important thing that will save you money in the long run, especially if you want to do these in increasing frequency, is buy yourself a table. It doesn't have to be a huge one. There are 4-foot folding tables that can fit in the back of most cars, unless you have like a sports car. Most venues will tell you, hey, here's the vending fee, here's the cost to actually come here and try to sell stuff, But then also you can rent a table and chair. And yes, getting a decent but basic folding table will probably suck in the beginning, but then you don't have to worry about any rental fees for the table for the foreseeable future. Number 2, unless you have a very, very specific idea of what you want your tablecloth to look like, go to Goodwill or Value Village or whatever the equivalent is in your area. Go to the housewares, get a sheet. Depending on what you sell and what vibe you want, you could also get one of those crazy floral ones. But as long as it's in decent condition, get a flat sheet. And if you got yourself a 4-foot table, you can use one of those sheets down to like twin size, and it'll be just fine. So now you have your small table, which is gonna fit in a lot of spaces. Now you have your tablecloth that you probably got for probably under $5, at least under $10, unless you're getting something really crazy or it's an antique shop instead of just a thrift store. And now comes one of the trickier parts, is doing something to make sure your products, your arts, are going up rather than just sitting flat on the table. It's a huge reason that I started out using these. And again, I think these are awful because of particular things that I make and I take to markets. But that is because I am not someone with good time perception. And these, when you're making like 2 towers of 3, or you're making some kind of like carnival arch kind of thing, which I did for a couple markets, these take a while to set up. But if you only have a little bit of them, or it's your only fixtures, I don't know if that's focusing. These go on pretty easily, and then you can connect any other cube in any direction. These are good for if you have magnets and you want to put your art prints up on something. You can also get solid ones that have just plastic in the middle, and you can just literally tape things directly to it. Part of why I don't like using these anymore is also because they don't really have a box. They just have this big bag that I used to put them in. And I don't like driving anyway, so they kind of slide around, and if I take a corner in a certain way, I can hear it slide all the way across the back. But if you're doing like just one tower of these, you can put your cash box in the back of these, and then everything you put on the front hides it, but it's also a display, so it's multi-use. But if you do like me with plushies and a whole bunch of other 3D kind of stuff, it is useful to put stuff in the little cubbies, but it gets annoying real fast. And I will probably do a video in the future about my setup, but what I'm replacing the cubes with is a wide wooden shelf that folds the shelves up and then folds the sides in. So I can just have one unit that I put on the table and pop out, which is my best advice for if you start doing a lot of these, or like me, you tend to be a little bit late to things. Or also, like me, you have a service animal that is maybe 90% trained and likes to go lick other people's feet. All of that does cost money, but those are alternatives to just going out and buying things that are labeled, like things that are labeled on Etsy or Amazon or whatever, print displays, because it's always going to be more expensive when it's specialty versus finding something that still works but in a different way. Oh. Oh. Okay, so these things are more on the artistic interpretation side, but things that I have found really help me as someone who sells mainly art prints and plushies is dressing to the theme of either the market in general or the theme of what you want your booth vibe to be. This doesn't have to be flamboyant, but I really started dialing in what I wanted my brand to be known for when I realized I was treating my market vending kind of stuff as all of my stuff with a few scattered like decorations, when really I should have been treating it more like people are stepping into my shop as if I had a storefront. And obviously it's not going to be as in-depth as that because I'm not picking out like giant area rugs to actually install, but depending on how editing in this goes, I will try to show you some examples, such as here. Which also kind of goes along with dressing to the theme of your booth, the vibe that you want to give people, and it could be as straightforward as just if you have a lot of black in your booth, probably you want to wear some black so you kind of go with it, you look like you belong there. Or, depending on the medium that you have, you probably want to dress along with the medium. Like if you have very cute cottagecore kind of things, to the best of your ability and comfort level, because it's still a market which can be very long, even if it's not some of the longest ones. If you're not comfortable, it can really suck. But to the best of your ability, I don't think people should nail down just one aesthetic that they make things in, but understanding how people will kind of label and micro-label at least some of what you do can help you kind of make it more of an experience versus, I try to, whenever I'm shopping at markets, which hasn't been for a while, but I try to stop at pretty much every booth unless I know it's definitely not something that I'm interested in. Long story. But how do you feel approaching a booth that's literally just a plastic table with stuff on it versus a cohesive experience? It has a total vibe to it. So I'm gonna come back and show you more of what I mean. Yes, super basic, but it's the most comfortable version of what I'm talking about. Super comfortable, and it's the simplest version of what I'm actually talking about. And if you're like me, I really hate the concept of work uniforms, but this is just all stuff that I already own. So it's dressing to go to work, it's a work outfit, but it's not like somebody else is telling me what I have to wear to blend in with everybody else. I'm dressing to go with the booth so that my work can stand out like as a cohesive thing versus long time ago, a couple years ago, that's a long time ago, I did a market that required everyone to have plain white awnings. And I did horribly at that for many reasons, including a lot of my branding is tied up in having a bright as orange awning. But I really had to do it for some reasons, and I will never be doing something like that again. A little fancier this time. So I'll pull up one of my recent-ish booth photos. There. This is how I would dress a little bit more specifically on theme versus I do a lot of dark stuff. It makes sense for me to wear a lot of black. So far we have do invest in the basics, get your own table, get some kind of chair that you can bring with you so you don't have to spend money on renting them from venues. We have making sure that your products, your work can be displayed vertically so that people can see it as they walk by. They don't have to get up close. They can scan everything, they can take their loops and then come back because they remember that a piece of yours, whatever medium that may be, was roughly eye level or shoulder level, or at least angled upwards, so they could recognize what it is without getting right up next to it. So we have buy your own essentials. It will save you a lot of money in the long run because the rental fees for various venues, they may be generally okay for like a one-off, you forgot something or something weird happened, but having your own things that you feel comfortable moving in and out will save you so much money in the long run. You can focus on other things. This can take the form of those fiddly cube kind of things. Try not, in my experience, try not to rely on those for your entire display because it gets annoying really fast. But those are customizable enough where you can have different levels of different types of things, especially if you have more than one kind of medium. Also, you can get those little tiny rare earth magnets and put things up like prints. And if you get some of the stronger ones, you can hang some smaller things like little plushies or keychains. This makes sure that if people are just looking for the first time or they're taking their loops around, they'll remember seeing what you have and you won't fall into the void of, oh, I didn't look at that booth, I'll do that in a minute, and the minute never comes. I don't remember if I put this one in, but I was telling someone about it recently in text or something, but acrylic paint sticks pretty well to the sides of like the nylon canvas awnings. You can use straight acrylic paint as long as you keep aware of not putting it on too thick. But if you want to put it on thicker or it seems like it's getting a little too thick, mix in a product called fabric medium, and you should be able to find it at any reasonable place that has fabric and acrylic paint. It necessarily bridges the gap. It can save you a lot of money in sign kind of stuff if you're confident in laying it out flat and doing whatever you're thinking of. One of the many things that I had to learn for myself is treating your booth like it's a storefront, not just tables that you set up and toss your stuff out on the top and just wave at people as they go by. Treat it like you were gifted a year of brick and mortar storefront, completely rent-free, utilities-free, whatever. What experience would you want to give people as they're approaching what you're presenting? One huge peeve that has stuck with me, especially from when I was looking at market tips and such, is you don't have to buy a ton of stuff to make it feel cohesive. You might want to replace, like me, want to replace your shelves, and which costs a different amount of money, and then you can do something else with the old ones. Staples like that might be a bit more than you can do all at once, but colors and placement can really help the vibe of your market booth. As for me, I try to put my tables mostly at the edges, especially if people with walkers or like power chairs want to come up into it. They don't feel like they have to wedge their way in there and like block everybody else's views and ability to get to stuff. But also a huge part of my branding is the color presentation, and that has saved me a lot of money from just running out and getting a lot of crazy stuff that I wanted to decorate with. Color theory, color placement, color choice gives people the vibe before they actually step up into it. It makes them curious enough to see closer items. So instead of doing stuff like running out and buying the perfect designer curtains that you've always wanted that would go perfectly with your brand, go to the thrift store, find something cheaper first, but think about how the colors and designs will contribute toward the overall energy you want to give people who step into your space. Kind of a cross between the vibes as well as the layout tips is I always wanted my work to kind of have a carnival-y, like state fair kind of vibe to it. So whenever I pop out my tent, I try to hang things up on the awning on the top, but low enough where people can see it walking by, because over time I've developed that to kind of give it a feel of witch's cabin, like herbs hanging up, like weird things that you can find in the rafters, but also when you go by carnival booths and there's the big plushies hanging up, so of course you want to come in and play the game. And several years ago, I studied marketing for a hot minute, and it was a slightly older book, but some things that I still recognized in more modern ads. But I realized that it had good information, how to kind of press the right button to give people the feeling you want to convey regarding what you've brought today. But it was very manipulative. It was the whole book that I had at that point was very, here's how you trick people into doing what you want. Concepts of marketing in general, especially where it overlaps with design, they do matter. They can be used in very cool ways. You can achieve the goals that you're looking for, but along with many reasons why I'm self-employed, they should not be used to trick people. They should be used to communicate effectively. Some people will get it, some people won't. There are still people who think it's awful that artists try to make money. But in my opinion and experience of doing so many markets, it's about making it easier for people who are looking for that type of energy to actually sense it when you present it. I have had a non-zero amount of people who have told me through not explicit terms they don't really get what I'm going for. Thankfully, there's a gray area in there where sometimes parents come in and say, I really support my kids, really like this kind of thing. It's creepy, but it's not like disturbing. You get it, even if you don't get it for yourself. When I started out on doing this, I found a lot of Pinterest vapid, inspirational, oh, just do this, go out and rip apart a whole bunch of palettes. And I ain't got time for that. And if you're watching this, you may not either. It does take some investment to get started, even apart from things like fees to get into markets. Sometimes there's free ones, but in buying a new shelf for myself to make my life and market work easier, I again thought to myself, I want to make sure that my old stuff goes towards someone who can really appreciate it, not just someone who would really like it, they just don't feel like buying it. Which in turn spawned this video, because I do feel like a lot of vendor market culture tends to be very, oh, why don't you just show up and put your stuff out, and it's not that simple. All of these may work for you, some of these may be really bad ideas for you, but they're things that I have never seen really quantified in the research that I've done for this kind of work. As my time management gets better and my shop stuff gets a little more predictable, I would love to do more videos like this, because I have a toe in multiple mediums, some might argue multiple industries, and I've seen too many people, whether explicitly or politely, saying and implying that people shouldn't share information because then it makes it easier for other people. Like, that's the point. If people are so scared of others having the same information that you do and acting on it in whatever way benefits them, then you're not confident in whatever it is that you do. I'm confident enough in my own work to say, hey, I'm going to do this my way. Here's the information so you can figure out how to do it your way. If you're in the Seattle, East Side, Tacoma, like Puget Sound area, as I've said before, I do a lot of markets. I'm trying to do less of them, but on my website there is an events page that as of right now I need to clean up a little bit because my schedule has changed a bit, but typically all of my upcoming markets are on there. And if you're local, I would love to see if you wanted to stop by. Not just to sell you something, because as I said, I am confident in my work. But if you had questions or you wanted to see how people surrounding me also do it, because I can only speak from my own experience, and not every single thing works exactly the same way for everybody. If you are not local, or if you are, I would love to see your booth set up, how you like to dress, whether or not it goes with your brand or not, or how you ever you interpret that. I would love to see whatever fixtures you found, whether it's something that you've bought or something that you've made or something that you realize can be used for something else. There's the technical side of things, which is really annoying, but I believe enough in what I'm trying to do to tough out the boring stuff. But there's also a lot of gray area, which does not get put in a lot of how to set up a market booth videos and articles and things like dressing the part so people understand that you are invested in what you're making. I try to post every Saturday on this channel. Sometimes there's extra stuff when I'm feeling particularly caffeinated. But like my work, there is no specific narrow theme to this. I do pretty much whatever I want, whatever I feel is necessary, but try to stay as organized as possible so I can actually get that out there. If you like what you've seen so far, I would love to see you next Saturday. Please like and subscribe. It lets me know what people are the most interested in so I can see where that overlaps with what I want to make long term. Hopefully, I will see you then. Yo, it's here.